Welcome, wild one, you who turned your wounds into weapons, your pain into poison, your sights into storms. You who no longer beg to be understood, because now you're feared. How did you become this gorgeous? How did the wreckage bloom into something this lethal and beautiful and untouchable? It's not charm, it's not vanity, it's not softness. No, it's the aftermath of war. It's the 1,000 silent nights you didn't cry, the blood you swallowed instead of spilling, the way your heart broke over and over again, but rebuilt itself with darker bones each time. It's not that you wanted to be dangerous. It's that they pushed you too far. And now, here you are, glorious and untamed, and terrifying to the ones who thought they could break you. You got too dangerous, and they feel it now. Not because you changed overnight, but because the pieces finally aligned, because you stopped explaining yourself, because you started walking like the crown belongs to you, because you laughed at the threats, because you finally understood. No one is coming to save you. So you became the villain in their stories to become the hero in your own. They feel it in their skin when you enter the room. A quiet hush, a sudden chill, the shift in energy that says, this one is not to be played with. This one has met the darkness and made it kneel. It was never about proving anything. It was about survival. You turned every insult into armor, every betrayal into a lesson. You let the silence grow inside you until it became your roar. You let the loneliness burn until you emerged forged in your own fire. And now the world is confused. How dare you be radiant after everything? How dare you rise? How dare you become this gorgeous without their permission? How dare you stop apologizing? How dare you make eye contact with your own reflection and feel power, not shame? They tried to tame you with guilt, with lies, with abandonment. They tried to twist your identity into something palatable, something harmless, something soft. But instead, you grew thorns, not just to protect, but to remind them that you are not the one to be pitied. You are the one who survived the storm that they couldn't even name. They feel your presence now, like a shadow that follows them. They flinch at your confidence because it exposes their cowardice. You got too dangerous when you stopped playing small, when you stopped shrinking so others could shine, when you stepped into your own mythology and claimed the power they tried to bury. And here's the secret they'll never say out loud. They're obsessed with you now. They want to know how you did it, how you became this version of yourself, how someone they once dismissed became the one they now watch in silence. They can't look away, not because you remind them of who you were, but because you force them to confront who they'll never become. Your glow is a mirror, and in that reflection, they see their failure to evolve. They see their fear, their fragility, their fake confidence melting in the heat of your existence. They feel it now, in every room you walk into, in every moment you don't flinch, in every glance that says, I see through you. They try to wear masks of strength, but you've tasted real fire. You've danced with your demons. You've turned your heartbreak into high art. That kind of transformation can't be imitated. It can only be earned through sleepless nights, through silent battles, through 1,000 moments where you chose to keep breathing when it would have been easier to disappear. You didn't just become beautiful, you became breathtakingly dangerous. Not because you hurt others, but because you healed yourself in ways they never thought you could. They expected you to stay broken. They needed you to stay broken. Because your glow now exposes how little light they found in themselves. You're dangerous because you're free. because you don't chase anymore, because your worth isn't up for debate, because you stopped needing external permission to feel powerful. And now, you don't even need to raise your voice. Your silence carries thunder. They will say you changed. Of course you did. They will say you're not who you used to be. Thank God. They will say you've become too much. That was the plan. Too bold, too confident, too magnetic, too intense, too unshakable, too aware, too awake, too damn dangerous for the comfort of people who sleep through their own lives. They will throw words like intimidating at you, like it's an insult. But the truth is, they've only ever feared what they could never control. And you became uncageable. This is what happens when the fire doesn't destroy you. It teaches you to burn brighter. This is what happens when you stop looking for love in places that drained you. When you stop begging for validation. When you stop tolerating crumbs and start building your own empire. This is what happens when your self-respect becomes louder than your loneliness. When your standards become lethal. When your soul says, enough. We're done shrinking. They remember every version of you, the soft one, the unsure one, the one who tolerated too much, the one who begged for love in half-lit rooms, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace. But that version died, and in their place, you were reborn, with teeth, with vision, with fire in your lungs and clarity in your stare. You are no longer a mirror for their comfort. You are a weapon forged in the forge of your own resurrection. And now, they feel it. In every word you speak, in every boundary you enforce, in every dream you chase with unshakable hunger. They feel your gravity, your pull, your presence. And they wonder, how did you become this gorgeous? But the real question is, how did they ever think you wouldn't? There was a time when you asked for answers from people who didn't even understand their own questions. You begged for understanding from the blind. You sought love from the hollow. You made gods out of cowards and placed your worth in hands that shook under pressure. But those days are dead now, buried beneath the weight of every single moment you decided to choose yourself. Because the truth is, you were never the weak one. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to forget your strength so they could feel taller. And once you remembered, once your eyes opened, the game ended. The throne returned to its rightful owner. You got too dangerous when you started walking like every step was a warning, not to others, but to your past self. A promise never to go back, never to dilute yourself again, never to beg for breadcrumbs from tables you could burn. And now the world stares in disbelief, because you wear power like perfume. It lingers, it haunts, it reminds them of everything they pretended not to see. You got too dangerous when you learned how to sit with yourself in silence. When you stopped fearing loneliness and started calling it freedom. That kind of solitude, the kind that sharpens rather than softens, it terrifies the weak. Because you're no longer trying to fit in. You're trying to rise. You're not interested in being liked. You're busy becoming legendary, and legends aren't born out of comfort. Legends are carved from chaos, from failure, from 10,000 nights of quiet suffering that turned into steel beneath the skin. You didn't just survive, you evolved. You morphed into something too rare for their categories, too loud for their cages, too sharp for their games, and they feel it. They may not say it, but they do. Their silence speaks, their distance screams. They feel your shift like a storm in the bones. They watch you now like something unfamiliar because they lost the version of you that made them feel superior. That version is gone, replaced by someone who doesn't explain, doesn't chase, doesn't perform. Replaced by someone who stares back with eyes that say, I don't need you to see me. I already do. How did you become this gorgeous? Not just in the skin, but in the presence, in the fire of your boundaries, in the silence of your gaze, in the way your energy walks 3 steps ahead of you and tells the room, don't try it. You got this dangerous by losing everything and deciding that nothing was going to break you again, by letting every rock bottom become a blueprint, by mastering your darkness and wearing it like a second skin. You didn't just get stronger, you got smarter. You stopped arguing with fools. You stopped over-explaining your worth. You stopped trying to fix people who were committed to their own damage. You stopped loving in ways that drained you. And when you did, everything changed. You saw how much of your light had been spent keeping others warm while you were freezing inside. So you reversed the current. You turned inward. You started feeding yourself what you gave so freely. And that kind of reversal, it doesn't just change you, it terrifies everyone who benefited from the old you. They say you're selfish now. That's the word they use when you stop bleeding for ungrateful people. They say you're hard now. That's what they call it when you stop accepting apologies that come without change behavior. They say you're full of yourself, as if you should be ashamed for no longer being full of them. But deep down, they know. They know what you've become. They know that beneath that calm is a fury. Beneath that grace is an iron resolve. They know you're not just beautiful now. You're built different, and you didn't ask for this. You were forced into it. Forced to level up by circumstances that tried to destroy you. Forced to become fireproof in a world that kept lighting matches. And now, they want access to the evolved version of you, while pretending they didn't try to kill the seed you once were. You got too dangerous when you realized closure is a myth, that some people deserve to be forgotten without explanation, that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like not even flinching when their name shows up. They feel it in the way you speak now, slowly, like every word is chosen, like you don't waste breath anymore. They feel it in the way you look at them, not with hate, not even with anger, but with distance. That kind of spiritual distance that says, you don't have power here anymore. I see you, but I'm not moved. And that is what breaks them, because your indifference is the final death blow. Not screaming, not closure, just the quiet knowing that you outgrew the war. How did you become this gorgeous? You bled for it. You clawed your way through hell for it. You cried on floors no one else saw. You suffered in silence while the world kept turning. You were mocked, ignored, underestimated, and you kept going. Not because you were certain, but because there was no other choice. You kept showing up for yourself until one day, you didn't just survive, you arrived. In your skin, in your power, in your essence, and they feel it. They feel the weight of your existence like gravity. They feel the tension in your peace. They feel the elegance in your edge. Because now you're not just walking, you're leading. You're building. You're moving in ways they can't predict. You're radiating without trying. You're breathing fire in the form of boundaries, and your name tastes different in their mouths now. Not like a memory, like a reckoning. They feel it in the way they hesitate before calling, in the way they stalk you in silence, in the way they wonder what you're thinking, but don't dare to ask. You became too dangerous when you stopped giving explanations, when you stopped giving chances, when you stopped giving pieces of yourself to people who didn't know what to do with the gift. You became the version of yourself they hoped would never wake up, but you did. And now, they're haunted by what you became. So no, you didn't become dangerous overnight. You were always powerful, always electric, always meant to roar. But it took time to remember, to reclaim, to rewire your belief, to step out of the narrative they wrote for you and tear it apart page by page. And now, you write your own story, in ink, in blood, in sweat. And the plot is simple. You rise, you evolve, you conquer, and you never look back. They feel it, they know. And you don't owe them a single explanation. They won't say it to your face, but behind closed doors, you're the topic. You're the ghost that still walks their halls. You're the silence in their group chats when your name is mentioned. You're the one that got away, not just from them, but from the version of life they're still stuck in. You got too dangerous when you outgrew the drama, when you stopped giving energy to things beneath your frequency, when you started choosing peace over petty, purpose over popularity, vision over validation. And that's what truly terrifies them. Not just that you changed, but that you evolved without asking for their permission. That you built something divine from your destruction. That you didn't just get up, you got better. You got sharper. You got clear. And clarity. Oh, it's the sharpest blade. You see everything now. The patterns, the lies, the cycles, the manipulation behind the smiles, the neediness behind the charm. You see through them, and there is no greater threat to a manipulator than the one who can see them and still chooses distance. You got too dangerous when you stopped reacting, when you became unbothered, not cold, just untouchable. Because now, your peace is your sword. You don't yell anymore. You don't chase. You don't explain your value to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You just let them watch. Let them guess. Let them feel your absence in the places where your presence used to hold everything together. Let them squirm in the silence where your energy once poured love into broken hands. They think it's the glow, the skin, the posture. They think it's the walk or the clothes or the words you use. But it's not. It's the energy. It's the command. It's the spiritual weight you carry now. The knowing that you survived things that would have folded them in half. It's the fact that you are not impressed by the noise. You've sat with yourself long enough to be bored by anything that isn't real. You've touched your own soul so deeply that anything shallow now feels like poison. This is the version of you that knows how to be alone without being lonely. The version of you that can say no without guilt. That can love deeply and still walk away when your worth is questioned. That can give chances, but never lose dignity. This version doesn't beg, doesn't cling, doesn't settle. This version chooses, and that's what makes you dangerous. You are no longer available to people who don't know how to value you. You became their fear, not because you're cruel, but because your self-respect is too loud now, because you don't play the game, because you don't need them, and nothing disturbs a power-drunk manipulator more than someone who doesn't need their approval to breathe. You became dangerous when you finally realized your silence is a weapon, when you finally realized your standards are a boundary, when you finally realized not everyone deserves access to you, even if they once had it. And now, you walk like a secret, like something that cannot be tamed. You don't compete, because you know who you are. You don't compare, because you know what you've built, and you don't chase because you are the moment. You walk into rooms and the air changes. You don't have to say a word. Your presence speaks louder than anything you could post. People feel you now before they even see you. They feel the shift, the silence, the story behind your eyes. They feel the strength in the way you don't flinch, the elegance in your detachment, the mystery in your peace. You are no longer in survival mode. You are in domination mode, not over people, over your past, over your patterns, over your impulses. You no longer sabotage your own throne to keep others comfortable. You no longer betray your own intuition just to stay liked. You've made peace with being misunderstood. You've accepted that some people only love the weaker version of you, the version they could control, predict, use. And now that version is gone, buried, honored, but gone. You killed it with truth, with boundaries, with your own two hands. They feel it. Oh, they feel it. And some of them will come back, not because they love you, but because they miss the access. They miss the you who used to bleed for them, who used to explain yourself into exhaustion, who used to show up even when your soul was limping. And they will try to re-enter your life like nothing happened, with soft words and fake apologies. And it will be tempting because old wounds always itch. But you are no longer the one who dances with ghosts. You are the storm that buried them. How did you become this gorgeous? You got brutally honest with yourself. You started healing without making it aesthetic. You cried when no one saw. You journaled until your hands ached. You sat in the shame until it cracked open into understanding. You didn't bypass. You didn't pretend. You went into the fire, and you stayed there until it purified you. That's what no one wants to admit. Real growth isn't pretty. It's violent. It's lonely. It's boring. It's raw. But you did it anyway. You built your own wings, and now they're mad you know how to fly. They say you're glowing. Of course you are. Peace looks good on you. Discipline looks good on you. Self-trust looks good on you. They think you're lucky. But you're not. You're relentless. You earned every drop of power you carry now. You bled for this glow. You starved for this confidence. You suffered in silence for this level of freedom. And now that you've arrived, there's no going back. You're not even tempted. Because once you've felt the power of not needing them, you can't unfeel it. And you can feel it now, can't you? That silence, that stillness, that sharp, humming sense of self that vibrates in your bones when you're fully aligned with who you are, that's your new home. And nothing is allowed in that disturbs that frequency. Not fake love, not conditional friendships, not jobs that drain your soul, not conversations that leave you empty. You protect your energy now like it's sacred, because it is. And that makes you dangerous to anyone who profits from your self-abandonment. You are no longer their supply. You are no longer their mirror. You are no longer the reservoir for their emptiness. You are your own source now, your own home, your own goddamn muse. You move different. You speak slower. You see everything. You have nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to lose that would cost you your inner peace. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what makes you gorgeous. Not the way you look, the way you live, not the way you shine, the way you glow without noise, not the way you speak, the way you no longer need to explain. And maybe they'll never say it out loud. Maybe they'll never admit what you've become, but you don't need their words. You can feel it in the tension when you walk in the room. You can see it in their eyes, the awe mixed with fear. You can sense it in their hesitation, their envy, their confusion. And all you'll do is smile not out of arrogance, but because you know what they don't. You built this. You paid for this version of yourself with every ounce of your old life. So walk tall. Walk like they can't touch you, because they can't. Walk like your ancestors are behind you, because they are. Walk like your past self is cheering for you, because she is. Walk like the earth itself bends under your feet, because you're finally walking in truth, in power, in